the setup that you guys came to with Sam Rogers, of him going to UW, paying the tuition while he's going to S2, how did that idea come about? And is that something you might explore more in the future, or is that a new thing? Or?
Sure. Look, I mean, and Sam's not been formally admitted to UW, so I don't want to disrespect anybody. The mission's over at UW, or assume that this is going to happen. But what I meant it is a hypothetical as an example. So, you know, Sam, in that case, was admitted to Villanova University out in the East Coast, and when we sat down with him and his family, we said, hey, what about this alternative, stay here and play professional soccer with S2, and we'll address the education piece as we're able to get. At the time, he actually was past the enrollment deadline at UW, but my understanding is he still intends to apply, and if he's accepted, then to enroll, and that's how you continue forward with that program.
So would that make you ineligible to play D1 soccer?
Absolutely makes you ineligible to play D1 soccer. But that's exactly the point, though, right? Is we had this binary choice for so long, right, where a kid had to finish high school, and then he had to choose, am I going to go to university and have at least arguably a lesser soccer education, or will I get my good academic education? Or am I going to get a good soccer education by going pro at 18 and neglect my academic education? And if I get hurt or something happens, I don't make it, now I fail one or the other. And what we're able to do here now is to say, hey, let's give you that professional soccer education, but let's not neglect that really good academic education at the same time. And so a place like UW, where obviously we have good relationships, you know, our owner is an alumnus of UW, and you know, the soccer coach is a really good friend of ours and as a big proponent of our academy, and we have tons of academy players always playing for them. So some kids, it'll make sense for them to continue to go to UW. Some kids, it'll make sense to sign at S2, but we hope to continue in partnership, not just with UW, but with Seattle University. And, you know, there's other really good soccer programs in the area, and, you know, different kids will make different choices, et cetera. But it's something that we're very excited about long term, just in terms of now not forcing kids to choose at 18 years old something that may impact the rest of their life. Now they can kind of have their cake and eat it too. They can get an education and they can pursue a professional soccer career.
On the subject of S2, Kurt Schmidt obviously left the Galaxy. What are the plans in terms of how to replace him? Is that probably an internal hire? Are you guys looking to bring in another person from outside the organization?
I suspect we're going to carve that role up. What I would say is Kurt was an extraordinary employee. He was just fantastic at a couple of things, and he kept coming to me saying, Garth, can I do this? Garth, can I do that? And I kept giving him stuff, and he kept succeeding, and I kept thinking he was going to eventually drown, and he never did. And but when he leaves, I think it behooves us now to take a step back and look at what makes the most sense in terms of the talent, skills, or the skill sets of the folks that we have internally. And I suspect the way we're going to go is to carve up. There's 4 or 5 buckets that really encompass that role by the end, and maybe carve out specifically the scouting piece and hire scouting specialists, and then handle the S2 piece and some of the administrative and contract and player development stuff, even amongst a multitude of people.
So, Garth, do you agree with the idea that the best players, talking about younger players, the best players are not playing in the pay-to-play clubs in Seattle? You say you have partners with Seattle United, with Eastside, and Impact.
Yeah, I think there were excellent players playing in those clubs. I'll give you an example. The team, the under-18 team, now the under-19 team that went to finished 3rd in the country. Jackson Reagan is one example, and I'm going to punch myself for not remembering, but there's another kid on there at least that came from Seattle United, and they had played most of their career in Seattle United. And when their coach thought they were good enough to come over to the academy, they did. So I think there are very good players in pay-to-play academies. I think it's incumbent upon us to use those pay-to-play academies, not just locally in Seattle, but all over the country, to find kids, and to find kids from everywhere, and including kids that maybe can't afford to play in the pay-to-play academy, and then take them to our academy, which is free, and then hopefully be able to appeal to all the different communities in the greater Washington area.
So one more question. When you came to Seattle, you had a plan in mind. What percentage of that plan you have achieved right now?
Man, if we defend our title, I would feel a lot better about our plan and what we've achieved. Look, I mean, we wanted to do things that we hadn't done before, right? And I think, winning the first MLS Cup is a good step toward that. We wanted to put sustainable systems in place and such that you could replicate success. Again, I think our progress, particularly if we're able to get to another final, will show that we were able to replicate that success. I'm very interested in organizations and systems and trying to use lots of smart people and employ them them effectively as a collective to generate information and data. And one of the things I'm most excited about going forward is, we've been known for our sports science for a long time, but we're really getting better in our data analysis, and that's a lot of this kind of hardcore Moneyball stuff where you can evaluate metrics and value players in different ways and hopefully find market inefficiencies. So that's one of the plays that we're, when we talk about Kurt Schmidt doing the scouting, it's not just eyeball scouting, watching video, going on the ground, talking to people. It's really rigorous data analysis. And I think that's an area we're getting a lot better. So as one example of a place where I think we're going to get better and I'm really excited about, as put a percentage on it, man, I don't know, I guess 2/3 or something like that. I mean, I'd like to think that we've passed, gotten a passing grade so far, but always get better, always want to improve. And look, it's the league's getting so much better. I mean, when you talk about, for example, why is the East better than the West for this year for the first time in like 10 years? And you look at the amounts of money getting spent by Atlanta and by Toronto and by New York City, and they're throwing the gauntlet down that this is something that we got to do in terms of investments, not just financially, but from a resource perspective, and how are we using our brain power internally to compete with those teams. And again, that's a really, really exciting challenge. So I think part of the reason it's difficult to answer your question simply is, one, I talk too much, but second, it's that the goalposts honestly keep moving because the league keeps getting better, and when LAFC comes in, there's going to be 3 really big clubs on the West Coast, us and the Galaxy and LAFC, and I think that's going to be interesting to see if that a counterweight to the Atlanta and the New York and the Toronto, and then who steps up in that kind of middle class, the Portlands, the Vancouvers, the Orlandos, the Montreals. Like, how is that going to go, and how is that going to mold the league going forward?